I secretly recorded my professor making sexist remarks and got him fired. I'm 26, in my final year of university, studying in a pretty competitive program. Throughout the years, I've had my fair share of quirky professors. But there was one, let's call him Dr. R, who stood out, and not in a good way. When I first had him in my second semester, I chalked up his behavior to being old school or socially awkward. He was that kind of professor who would sometimes crack dry or off-color jokes, and people would just kind of laugh uncomfortably and move on. But as the semester progressed, it became pretty clear that his quirkiness wasn't harmless. It was something else entirely. It started subtly, like when he'd almost always call on male students during discussions or Q&A sessions, even when there were plenty of women raising their hands. If a female student did get called on and gave the right answer, he'd sometimes wave it off with something like, "Well, lucky guess." You could see some of the girls in class shrinking back in their seats. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But soon enough, it became impossible to ignore. Then came one of the lectures I'll never forget. We were tackling a challenging unit, and after explaining a complicated problem, Dr. R casually remarked, "This might be a little tough for the girls, but just smile at your lab partners and they'll help you out." He laughed. Some guys chuckled nervously. A few of us exchanged glances like, did he really just say that? At that point, I started paying more attention to his behavior. It was clear this wasn't a one-off. In fact, it got worse. One time, a female student raised her hand to ask a really insightful question about the material. Instead of addressing it properly, Dr. R chuckled and said, "If female students spent less time worrying about their looks and more time on this material, maybe they'd all be on your level." He said this in front of the whole class. The girl blushed and looked completely humiliated. Some of the guys laughed uncomfortably again. Others, like me, just sat there frozen. I could see how these comments were stacking up and chipping away at the confidence of the women in the class. Some of them even started participating less. Then came the tipping point. It was a scorching day, and one of the girls showed up in a perfectly normal tank top. Nothing revealing, just standard summer wear. Dr. R paused the entire lecture to point it out, saying, "Wow, dressing like that for extra credit? Bold strategy." The room went dead silent for a second before a few nervous laughs trickled out. The girl, though, she visibly shrunk in her seat, eyes glued to her notebook for the rest of the lecture. That's when something inside me snapped. It was like watching someone humiliate a teammate while everyone else sat there pretending it was fine. I couldn't unsee it anymore. I couldn't pretend like this was just old-fashioned humor. This was toxic. That day, I decided to start recording the lectures discreetly. Over the next few weeks, I captured him making all sorts of sexist remarks, comments about women not being suited for logic-heavy fields, jokes about how women should pursue less stressful careers, insinuations that they weren't cut out for STEM. The most infuriating part was how normalized it all seemed. Some people just rolled their eyes or laughed it off, but it was eating at me. And it was eating at the women in our class too. You could just tell they were engaging less, avoiding eye contact with him, sitting further back. It wasn't just uncomfortable, it was straight up demoralizing. Eventually, after collecting enough material, I compiled everything into a file and submitted it anonymously to the university's disciplinary committee. I wasn't looking for recognition or a pat on the back. I just wanted this guy to stop poisoning the classroom. The university acted surprisingly fast. Within a month, Dr. R was suspended pending investigation. A few weeks later, word got out that he had been fired. Officially, they used terms like breach of professional conduct and creating a hostile learning environment. But that's when things got complicated. Some of the guys in my class found out I had something to do with it, and they weren't shy about letting me know how they felt. A few pulled me aside after class, saying things like, "Man, you ruined a guy's entire career over some harmless jokes. And why couldn't you just ignore it? That's just how he is." There was this undercurrent of resentment, like I had broken some unspoken guy code. I'm not gonna lie, it made me question myself for a second. I wondered if I had overreacted. But then, one by one, several of the women from my class approached me privately. Some thanked me outright, saying they'd felt trapped for years because Dr. R had a reputation. But no one ever spoke up. A few shared that they had dropped classes or avoided certain electives just to steer clear of him. One woman told me she had almost switched majors because of how discouraged she felt under his instruction. Another mentioned how every time she entered his class, she felt like she was walking into an environment where her intelligence would be questioned, regardless of how hard she worked. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't about me, or even just about Dr. R. This was about the women who had been made to feel small and unwelcome in a space where they should have been able to thrive. Looking back, I'm proud of what I did, even if it wasn't the popular move with some of my classmates. But honestly, if standing up for what's right means a few guys give me the cold shoulder, that's a trade-off I can live with. Because no one deserves to feel like they don't belong in a classroom, especially because of something as stupid as gender.